Good evening, traders. I think it's about time. We've been together long enough. I'm going to just start saying that every time now. Good evening, traders. Traders, if you're here, you're interested in trading. You're interested in learning something about trading. You're interested in learning more. You're interested in getting better as a trader or becoming a trader. That's what Stock Talk Thursday is really all about. Of course, you know, if you've been here before, Stock Talk Thursday, hot or not. I want to help you understand maybe there's something in the market that it seems like a lot of people, in some cases, it seems like everyone is talking about these stocks. And I want to let you know whether or not I think those are actually hot or not. Maybe they were, maybe they're not anymore. Maybe they weren't, and now they are. That's something I want to help you understand. But also, maybe there's some things out there that we haven't heard about. They're not being talked about a lot. I want to help highlight some of those things as well and take a look and say, hey, are these hot or not? And tonight, we're actually going to get an opportunity to go back to an area, a part of the market, a part of our economy that we looked at prior to ever doing any of our Stock Talk Thursdays. This is some time ago. Last year, we looked at this. Things have changed pretty dramatically since March of last year, right? 1 year ago now. And in particular, we looked at travel stocks. Okay, we looked at travel stocks. There was a very unique opportunity in travel stocks last year because of everything that happened. We talked about that in an episode of Market Monday last year. Well, I want to take you guys into travel stocks now. A year later, what can we find? What can we see? Is it hot? Is it not? And I'm actually going to spend the majority of tonight looking at actual charts. Okay, we're going to go in. I've put together a watch list of stocks, and I'm going to take you through each of these companies one by one, and I'm going to show you what I see on the chart, because as we've talked about in previous broadcasts, both Monday and Thursday, we really do everything that we do here at Tradeway based on what is happening on the stock chart. It's not just news. It's not just tips. Something from your neighbor, something from a news source of some, I was going to say newspaper. I don't know if anybody reads the newspaper anymore. Maybe some of us do. But wherever it is, we got to have that chart. We got to know what's happening on the chart. So that's what we're going to spend the majority of the time doing today. As always, if you're joining me live tonight, whether you're on Facebook, you're on YouTube, we are happy to have you here. If you click that like button on Facebook, then it will let you know anytime we go live. If you subscribe over there on YouTube, you won't miss any of the Tradeway videos. It will let you know when we are going live. And of course, we always want to have you on here live. Why? Well, many reasons, but ultimately, you get to ask questions. So right over here on my screen, you can go ahead, pop your name, say hello, ask a question, anything you want as we move along together. This is your time. You're joining me tonight, giving me the pleasure of your company, making that investment in your busy life. I'm going to make sure you get something for it. But to upgrade that, you can ask me questions, and that gives you access to a trading coach, and I can help you do that. I do that all day long here at Tradeway, helping other students understand what is going on in the market. So with that said, feel free to comment and jump in at any time. I'm going to bring us over to another screen now. We're going to look at some charts, but I'll pop back over periodically to make sure I catch any questions that you may have. Okay? So let's go ahead. Let's pull this up. Share my screen with you guys. Okay. So you can see we've got a chart. Now, just for those of us who have not been on with us for an episode where we specifically looked at charts, I'm not going to go over all of that right now. But what I do want to just quickly review is what are we looking at here? Well, ultimately, we're looking at a specific stock. In this case, we're looking at an index of the S&P 500. And each of these candlesticks represents a single day of trading. So that's the first thing we got to know. In this case, when they went up from the open, it was green. When they closed end of the day down from the open, it is red. And we are ultimately looking at about 5 or 6 months of data here. I can zoom in and out, and we're going to go basically on that time frame as we look at these stocks tonight. But again, you can always go further out. So this is the most basic introduction to this very powerful tool that helps us know what stocks are doing well, what stocks are not doing well. And here's a tip for you guys. Even when a stock is doing well, that doesn't mean that just any time is a good time to buy the stock. Okay? If a stock is doing poorly, then there are some indicators on the chart that can help me know this stock could really be turning around. These are the kinds of things that a chart helps us do. We really get to look at what's happening to the price of a stock, because when you think about this, what is the price of the stock telling us? Look at the screen that's in front of us right now. It's really telling us all of the buyers and sellers that are out there in the world somewhere. We won't meet them. We won't see them all, but they are perfectly represented right here on the chart in front of us. So you could say that a stock chart is really a representation of what is happening in the minds of all the other buyers and sellers. When the buyers take control, the price goes up, meaning there's more buyers than sellers. Price goes up. When the sellers take control, it goes down. Okay? That's really an introduction to the stock chart, as we are going to dive into a bunch of these today. I feel like maybe we're having some issues with the comments. This would be the first time in over a year that we've never had any comments, and I don't see any in there. So for those of you out there joining live today, I can see that you're on here. We may be having some issues with the comments because I'm not seeing anything coming through. So I apologize if that is the case. You're trying to comment and I'm not seeing it. With that said, let's jump on over. Now, we're going to talk about travel stocks. So travel stocks I've narrowed down a little bit. We could look at a lot more stocks than we're going to look at tonight. And we are going to look at a few. So we're not only looking at just a couple, but there could be a lot more we're going to look at. I think these are some important ones. These are some big ones. These are ones that are catching some attention right now. They've been moving pretty significantly, and I want to make sure to highlight that. But more than just saying, here's a stock or an industry that is doing a lot right now, I want to take you into the specific chart and show you some different scenarios. I want to take you to these different charts and show you that even, for example, amongst airlines, okay, not every airline is doing the exact same thing. Not every airline's chart is showing me the exact same thing. How is this important? Well, when I come on here and I talk to you guys every week and I talk about hot or not, a huge part of what I'm looking at is what we're going to look at tonight, the specific chart. What does it tell me? How much information can I get from this chart that helps inform me? Because if I was going to make a decision to put some of my money into a stock, attach it to this company through their stock, I want to make sure I have really informed decisions about how to do that. Now, of course, at Tradeway, that is what we teach all of our students to do. We're going to get a preview of that tonight in travel stocks. So that said, we're going to look at basically 3 different kinds of stocks here, all travel oriented, okay, all travel related. The biggest one we're going to look at is airlines. And I'm going to tell you why I chose these in a second. Airlines. We're also going to look at some cruise lines. We talked about cruise lines last year in particular, okay? No cruising, right? There's been no cruising for, if you were with us in the 5-day Faith and Finance Challenge, Jeffrey talked about it on day 2, specifically about cruise lines, cruise stocks, and they went down significantly. company's not making any money if they're not doing any cruises. If the company's not making any money, the stock's going to get hit. But these companies are still around. And as tensions regarding COVID-19 begin to ease, as vaccinations begin to rise, as reopenings become more normalized, we're looking at being able to potentially be doing some cruises sooner than later. And that's, of course, happening with airlines. I'm going to talk more about that in a second. So cruise lines are also in there. And then I've also got some hotels, right? I put a few hotel stocks in there that I think will be interesting to look at. And I've kind of previewed this already now, but really, switch back over here. Really, you can see based on what I just described, what's happening. In fact, while I'm talking here, why don't I take you guys over to this guy right here. Let's just zoom out. And while I'm talking and making this next point, you can look at this chart here. First, I'll set this up. Look over here. I know I've zoomed out quite a bit here, but this is coming late February into March of last year, when things really started to tank. What you're looking at here is what we call an ETF, okay? So basically, let's just keep it simple tonight. Basically, this chart is telling us what this sector was, how that was performing over the last year. Well, you say sector, what sector are we talking about? Transportation, okay? We're looking at transportation as a whole, okay? This doesn't necessarily include, transportation is a broad term, but airlines are included in this. So you can see that this has been recovering, but boy, it sure has taken off since the beginning of February. And we're going to see that on a lot of stocks tonight, okay? They have taken off. And I think it'll be interesting for us to take a look at them a little more closely. Maybe you've heard about this a little. Ooh, airline stocks in particular have been in the news, especially the last couple of weeks. So this is something I want to bring to you guys' attention tonight. But what happened here? Well, like I already said with cruise lines, we saw stocks that really, let me back up for a second. What ultimately causes people to buy the stock? Well, when you buy a stock, when you buy a share of the company, in essence, you're attempting to share in the growth of that company. If I own a piece of American Airlines and the value of American Airlines goes up, then what tends to happen is the value of the shares also increase with the company. Now, that's not a guarantee, but it tends to be that way, right? The fundamental value of the company goes up and the share price rises as well. So when airlines weren't getting any customers, there's not a lot of expectation for growth, is there? There's no money coming in. In fact, I was reading some articles today about these massive government bailouts that airlines received last year. Question is, did they really need as much money as we gave them? That's a separate conversation. But what about now? Okay, they had no customers, or at least not many, very few. Now things are normalizing, right? Things are normalizing. Now, flights have been picking up for some time, just looking at the data, but it's starting to reach more of a tipping point where airlines are saying, we're actually starting to turn a profit, okay? We're starting to get ahead again, and they also have received these massive bailouts. Now, those bailouts, just to be clear, obviously that part of that was because we had a lot of people's jobs on the line. So I don't want to be insensitive about that. There's more to those bailouts than that. And again, that's a separate conversation than we're going to get at tonight. But the point that's important for you and I is there's a lot of money flying around here, okay? And as normalization happens where airline traffic picks up, well, what does that mean for airline stocks? What does that mean for hotel stocks? What does that mean for cruise lines? Okay, because cruise line stocks have actually been rising. I'm going to show you that tonight. But think about this for a second. If you go, I told Jeffrey this on the 5-day challenge that we did. I actually just recently looked at booking a cruise. Okay, I went online. I know that these cruise lines are trying to give incredible deals to get people to sign up. But even when you go to sign up, you're signing up for late 2021, usually mid or early in some cases 2022. So they're not actually active yet. They're still projecting, okay? But the stocks are rising. What's going to happen to these stocks when they are actually taking on cruises again? They're taking on passengers. They're taking customers now, but they're not actually taking them as passengers just yet. So these are some things we can talk through tonight as we look at these charts, but definitely some interesting opportunity for growth here. So let me just go ahead and go through the list. Okay, I have not put these in any specific order. We're going to kind of jump around between the three different industries that I just talked about in this sector. So here's what's interesting to me about this one, and this is kind of what I was just saying. Okay, I want us to understand. We can look at this two different ways: short term, long term. Okay, we call long term, we use the term buy and hold. It's important for our viewers out there to understand that there's not just one way of investing. Okay, investing in a company, like I said, where you're looking to grow with the company over a long period of time, say 6 months, 12 months, maybe 10, 20 years. This is the buy and hold model. This is what we call long-term investing. Even if you had bought some of NCLH, which is what we're looking at here, Norwegian Cruise Lines, even if you'd bought some of this somewhere in here last year and you said, you know what, I'm just going to hold this for at least a year. Okay, that's long-term. In fact, even the government, when they tax capital gains, meaning gains from stocks, when they tax, and they will tax it, it is income to us if we realize a gain in a stock. You get taxed at a lower rate, okay? Depends on your personal tax rate, but it tends to get lower when you hold it long term, okay? I am a licensed security advisor. I'm not a tax specialist, so I'll say that up front. But long-term capital gains tends to be lower, okay, than your tax bracket that you get taxed at if it's below 12 months. So what am I saying? There's even a definition there for long-term. Now, why am I saying this for us tonight? Because I want us to differentiate. I'm going to make some comments here. Some of them won't necessarily be beneficial for those of us, or at least not as, they won't pertain as much to those of us who are looking at long-term, okay? Some of us, and this is what we do primarily at Tradeway, is trading stocks. That tends to be 2 to 3 days to 2 to 3 weeks, okay? And the whole premise of that is, while there's value to long-term investing, Tradeway has an entire division that does only long-term. Imagine a stock chart. Let's just go here for a second. This is a little bit outside of where I was going to go tonight, but imagine you bought a stock back here, okay? And then you held it. And you say, Blair, that's pretty good. I just held it, right? I just held it from one side of the chart to the other, and I was able to realize a gain from here to here. Let's say you sold it today, okay? You say, that was good. Well, what if you knew how to use the chart to decide when to get in and when to get out, and instead of getting in once and getting out once, you were able to get in 5, 6, 7, 8 or more times from over here to over here? The potential for us to realize an even greater gain, it's not a guarantee, it's a potential, is high, okay, if we know how to do this. So that is trading. And really what we can do is combine both as a more of a comprehensive strategy for investing our money in the stock market. So that said, I'm going to talk about the long term a little bit on some of these stocks. I'm going to talk about the short term on some of these stocks, not to be confusing, but to be comprehensive, to make sure we understand. So back to Norwegian Airlines, and I'll explain even a little more specifically, why I think it's so important that we differentiate the long and the short term. Because some of these right now, I might say the stock is hot, but it may not be hot right now. Go out and buy it Friday morning, which, by the way, I'm not saying go buy any of these tomorrow morning. I'm not saying that, but it'll be easy to see, especially with some of them. They're certainly doing very well. They're certainly very hot, and there's something we can pay attention to. We've got to learn to apply our skill sets, which is what we teach in our programs, but these are some good things to be looking at. So let's just take a second here, and let me stretch the scale out. You can see on Norwegian here, in the long term, right? We're looking at over a year here. In the long term, what an incredibly big drop. Where was it at? $59. $59. It went to $7, $6.86 approximately. Okay, $59 to less than 10 in a very short amount of time, right? No money coming in, wondering, is this company even going to be around next year? Well, here we are. It's next year. It's still there. And what has it done? It's gone from $6.86, $7, to approximately $29 today, okay? That's 4 times the value. It's grown 4 times the value from its low last March. Now, have they taken a lot of cruises between then and now? No, they haven't, okay? They may have sold some packages for 2021, 2022, like I mentioned, but they haven't been doing any actual cruising. In fact, I used to live in Los Angeles, and I had a music studio that was in San Pedro, south of the city, right near all of the cruise ships, all the cruise launches that were down there. I could literally see them from my studio, and the ships are parked, right? There's nothing happening. So here's my point tonight. The stock is moving up, but they haven't really opened up yet. Look at how much room from where they were to where they are now. These stocks definitely have some room to run before they even reach their previous value. Okay? They had some, I want to go back a little further. You can see that there have been some dips back there. So I'm not saying that Norwegian Airlines, once they start cruising, is going to immediately run back up to $60. But I can tell you from the chart that was the value that investors felt this company was worth before this happened. It's been creeping up, but it's not even close yet, right? We're not quite at 50% of that value yet. So there is definitely some room for this stock to run. And if we get into now the shorter term, looking at this particular stock, you'll notice in a lot of the stocks we're going to look at, really near the start of February, you're about $20 on the stock, right? And it's just been ripping higher, especially since right here, okay, mid-February. $22 goes up to 34. Okay, so that's a pretty significant run on the stock. In the shorter term, and some of you students out there who are watching tonight, you'll see, what are we doing here? We made a high and we made a lower high. We made a lower high. So in the shorter term, this is why I talked about short and long. In the shorter term, it's getting a little weaker. It's pulling back, okay? Investors got excited. They're taking some profits out of this right now. But overall, definitely not even close to pre-COVID evaluations yet. So it'll be interesting to see where this stock starts to go as, again, normalization settles in at a greater level. Let's keep on moving here into Airbnb. Airbnb, interesting. This is a newer stock, okay? This one has not been around very long. In fact, if I just take it back to the first day, December 10th was the first day that this stock was actually publicly traded. Now, I'll go quickly through this one. Airbnb has been hit the same way, except that it's a very new stock. So there's a lot of excitement around this company, around this stock. And so it's been actually able to improve its evaluation. It wasn't even actually trading during the height, if you will, of the shutdowns, at least nationally. I used to live in California, and they're still shut down today, at least where I was. So what do we have here? Well, let's just take a look at a quick thing and I'll move on. Notice how I've got some lines drawn on this chart. We've talked about this on Market Mondays. We've got a point at which the stock seems to pivot, goes up, then it seems to pivot down, then it seems to pivot up, then it goes down, then it goes up, down, up. Does that sound like a pattern? Sounds like a pattern to me. It's repeating the same thing over and over again. So what can we do? We can potentially anticipate that the pattern will continue. Now, the specifics of how we do that is something we cover, especially in our Step 1 course. But this is a very useful pattern to have. Okay, so is the stock hot or is the stock not? Well, actually, the stock seems to be faring pretty well given the circumstances around the travel industry. It's just a matter of knowing when the right time to pull the trigger on something like this would be. Moving on from there. This is interesting, and I wanted to include this in here. This is Sun Country Airlines. Some of us have never even heard of Sun Country. Some of us have. Definitely a smaller airline. Look at this. 2 days ago, okay, 2 trading days now anyway, yesterday was their IPO, okay? That's the initial public offering, meaning they offered the stock to the public for the very first time. That was yesterday, okay? So there's not a whole lot that we can do here on this one. I wanted to include this in there because I think that's an interesting thing to see. Some of us out there have never heard of an IPO before. Maybe we heard the term IPO. We just didn't necessarily know what it stood for. We do have some strategies at Tradeway for IPOs. However, what we're looking at right now, it just doesn't give us a lot to go on, okay? Trading, as I always say, is never guessing, gambling, or going for it. And that is ultimately what you have to do on this chart. It's a flip of a coin right here, okay? Unless you're doing something long-term and saying, this is a company I want to hold on to for a while because I believe in the company for XYZ reasons. As far as trading goes, we don't really have a pattern to go on because we've only got 2 days of data. So for that reason, this one's on my not list. Okay, this one's on the not list. It may do well. Need time to see that. But I wanted to include it here so we could see how it was doing. Now this one here is Royal Caribbean. So here we are with another cruise line. Now let's take a look at this as well. Now this has been performing differently, hasn't it? Whereas NCLH had recovered some, not a whole lot. Here we've got pre-COVID levels of about approximately $135. And the high on this stock has been up to almost $100. Okay, so a couple things I see on this chart. I have to find my tools here. I don't know where they are. Oops, wrong one. Just getting these. Oh, they did an update on this software, and I have to say, I'm just not a huge fan. This is kind of what it's been doing, right? It's kind of been trending up here. You can see these, what I like to call peaks and valleys. It's very easy to see that. But what happens? Same thing I said on the other chart. February, mid-February, boom, this thing starts to explode. It zooms up. So again, this expectation, normalization, it's putting these stocks on a bit of a run. Well, what happens after a big run like that? That's why I said, again, I'm going to keep mentioning this long-term, short-term, because we're looking at big time frames and we're looking at small time frames. We ultimately see investors take profits. After things do really well, they tend to take profits. That's what causes stocks to rise and fall. Okay, so right now we're kind of in a crunch. We're kind of just going sideways here. So nothing too crazy to watch. Here we've got to see there's a pattern here that I've got. It's what we call a wedge. And it's kind of stuck in that right now. So we ultimately have this picture of got some room to run here. Definitely got some room to run for pre-COVID levels. But on the short term right now, we're just kind of going sideways, and the excitement has paused for the time being. Now, getting into some of these airlines. I'm going to go ahead and delete this off of here. We are now, as of earlier today, not necessarily where we are at the close of the day, pretty close. Spirit Airlines, okay? Ticker's SAVE, SAVE. Spirit Airlines getting pretty close to those pre-COVID levels. This has been very hot. This discount airline has been doing very well. I'm trying to remember if I've actually flown Spirit in the last year. I believe I did once. And a lot of people have still been using this airline. So this one has been tremendously hot. What was our lows back here? $8 a share. $8 a share, closing just under $40 a share today. Okay. Not at the pre-COVID highs, but almost at these levels. Okay. So when I look at some of these airlines, I'm going, this is maybe something I want to think about. Now I have a skill set that I'm going to come in here and I'm going to apply to this. I said this already. I'm not necessarily just going to go and buy a stock just because it's in one of these industries. However, I am interested to look at industries that have the potential for big top-side movement. And then I apply my skill set to help me manage risk, to know when to get in, when to get out. That's why we need to learn more skills. But hot or not, definitely hot. Looking at these airlines, some more than others, we're going to look at some more in a minute, but some of these are very hot. And if I think about the stock doing well when they are not at normal passenger capacity, I wonder how they're going to perform when things really begin to normalize. There's some political talk, there's some news talk about May being a time when the vaccinations will be available to everybody. And no matter what our opinions are on vaccinations, if a lot of people are getting them, and I keep putting the air quotes up, but normalization, we could see more traffic in these things. In fact, we're going to see more traffic in these things. So what is that going to do? That's something that's on my mind. So is it hot? Yes, it is. I think it is, because the potential is certainly there. And the chart is showing me that since November, we had a lot of sideways movement here, didn't we? Since November, this thing has never looked back. It's more than doubled in a very short amount of time. And their business operations are not back to the normal levels yet. Okay, so that's something I find very interesting. Now, going to move a little bit faster here. Look at this guy. What do we got here? United Airlines. Here's a bigger carrier, right? Not one of the discounts. Bigger carrier. Still pretty far from some of those COVID levels or pre-COVID levels. Okay. But getting a big bump this past week, and again, past month and a half, because of a lot of this normalization. United Airlines, Delta Airlines, same thing. Okay. The question I have on some of these stocks is, you see that had a slope on the trend here. It tends to come into this trend and then move up. But as the expectation of normalization gets a little bit higher, it actually has changed the slope. So once again, in February, this guy just took off. Okay. We had some volatility in the market, came down, hit this moving average, which was right on top of this previous high there. And then it popped up again. Looking at the short-term movement of the stock, we're up. I'm wondering, are we going to come back down into this level here? Don't know. Going to have to wait and see. Maybe things are heating up enough where this old slope is no longer in play. Just going through some of the processing with you as I look at one of these charts, because this is ultimately how I begin to implement my skill set to see what charts do I like, what stocks do I like, where would I buy, what would I buy, and when would I get out? How do I formulate my plan around a trade? Next up, Carnival Cruise Line. So we looked at a cruise line, and this one's still pretty far down there too. Now that makes sense because, like I said, we don't have any cruising actually happening right now, but still improving. Interesting, the stock price still appreciating, with some real operational, right, revenue overhead potential in these stocks if they actually start to see people buying cruises. I know people speculate, would you go on a cruise? Would the majority of people just go for it? I've been surprised. I've been surprised at some people who would say, yes, I absolutely would. And I've been surprised at some of the people who say, absolutely not, I wouldn't. So you never know exactly. We'll see what that kind of demand is as things open up. But certainly some overhead room here. Now, what's interesting here is, look at Carnival before COVID. Okay, so yes, COVID came in and definitely hurt the stock. But you know what I see right away? That down. It was really this one's already moving down. Let's go back to NCLH. This guy was more moving sideways, right? So not necessarily all created equal in the stock just because they're both cruise lines in terms of what the stock had been doing pre-COVID. But if we've got a level here of 50, just over $50, we've still got almost halfway to go before we even get to what the company was worth right there. Back to the airlines, American Airlines. Now, what's interesting here is American Airlines, there was a pretty big gap here. The stock gapped, meaning it opened, it closed at one price, say on a Thursday, whatever the 24th, 21st of February was, and then it opened the next week at a different price. There was a gap in the price. That's ultimately the price we got back to today. And sometimes those can be resistance for the stock in the short term. So that's an interesting price to close at today. You got this big old looking cup, looking bowl right here. There's a specific pattern there actually that we teach our people. So hey, when I see this pattern on the chart, I need to now watch for the ABC. If I see the ABC, then I know what to do. That's what we're seeing on this chart here. But interesting, this one definitely a lot closer to those pre-COVID levels than some of the others, certainly than some of the other major carriers. Now, this is interesting. You've got a stock like LUV, which is Southwest. Okay, if you've ever flown Southwest, you're familiar with their branding. You know why they call it LUV, love. It's a big part of their branding and marketing. But this stock really goes nuts beginning of February, really takes off. And you'll notice this one is this a hot stock? Yes, it is a hot stock. It's clearly a hot stock. I can say that objectively because of what the chart is doing, right? It's not an opinion. It's not a speculation. It's where the stock has been moving. It has been hot. But the question is, what can I do with that? Because will it continue to be hot? That's the question you want to ask, right? Blair, is it going to continue to be hot? Well, I can't predict the future. And I tell our students all the time, charting, which we are looking at now, and trading is not about knowing the future. And we don't need to know what a stock is going to do to make money. And that's a good thing because we can never know what the stock is going to do. We can only know what the stock has been doing, find price edge, not price movement, price edge. And if we find price edge, we can apply our skill set to manage the risk and say, I will buy this stock because it's worth this amount of money to me to see if it does what I want it to do. If it does not do what I want it to do, it's not worth any more than that amount of money to me. That is trading. That is trading. So do I know what it's going to do? No, I do not know what it's going to do. But I can tell you that as I look at this chart, I instantly start to assess how much risk is this going to present to my account? And how much profit potential do I see based on the skills I have when I look at this chart? We're getting a preview of that tonight. I'm going to tell you one thing I see immediately. Well, yes, it's hot. The stock is hot. But we're also, I'm going to shrink this down a little bit more. We're actually above those pre-COVID highs already. We've actually crossed that. It hit it here, 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 and dropped. We're above that right now. So where can we go from here? This is, let's just make sure. There we've got all-time highs now at $66. Okay, that's approximately speaking. That's our all-time high in the stock. So I take into account a little bit of this stock has already recovered a lot of that market. I'm not going to say market share, a lot of that share value. It's already recovered a lot of that. So as it gets more and more and more and more extended out, I'm going to take a little bit more risk buying that unless I let it take some kind of a rest and look at a spot that might be better for me to enter into that stock. It's definitely something worth watching. This has been a strong company the whole time. I mean, look at this right here. Even right at the beginning, this is one of the airlines that just has done fairly well through this whole season. So definitely something to watch, but it's not so much that I'm looking at this chart and going, we've got some headroom before it gets back to where it was. It's already beyond that. So I need to be a little more careful about what I do with this one at that level. I was a little surprised by this. I don't look at hotel stocks a lot. I don't. This one has actually, look at this. This is Hilton. Hilton has been for some time now back above these levels. So that's interesting to me. And I'm going to go over quickly and look at Marriott, which is about the same. The chart looks about the same. These have recovered pretty well. So these aren't necessarily looking like they're valued really cheap in comparison to what they were before. So that definitely looks a little bit different. I'd be interested to know what the traffic in these hotels now compared to where they were before. Certainly these stocks also, look at this right here. If I zoom in a little bit, same thing, right? Early February, almost everything that I've shown you tonight, early February, these things just took off. So they are definitely moving pretty quickly. And then what do I have? One more. Yes. Hawaiian Airlines, surprisingly, has done fairly well as well. This is obviously going to be localized more so to Hawaii. So you haven't really been able to travel to Hawaii. So it's interesting that they've been able to pull in what they've been able to pull in their share price, given that they've been severely limited. But this one almost back to those pre-levels as well. And I'm kind of interested looking at some of these stocks and going, okay, which ones here are really still, they've got a lot of room to grow. Now, if we're talking long-term, there's another conversation there on, well, why aren't these stocks catching up as quickly as some of the other ones? That's an important thing. But again, I focus primarily over on the short term. So I want to know where these stocks were, the potential they have to grow, but I want to take advantage of some of the smaller price movements that happen. And if they've got that headroom, I want to see if they can continue to be hot as things open up. That's something to watch for in the future. So these travel stocks, some are hot, some are not. And I'll just finish by saying, if you've got, I'll just double check. Oh, we did get some comments in there. Nice, guys. Benjamin, I see you there. 2 days to 2 weeks trading. Yes. Ultimately, that is what we call swing trading. That's what we call swing trading. So we've got some industries here. We've got some stocks here. Some have fared better than others. But as things begin to open up more and more, now in some places in the country, I'm in Texas right now. Last Wednesday, all mask mandates and closures were lifted in the state. That can be very controversial to some, not to others. But wherever you land on the spectrum there, it is something that normalization is settling in at another level. I know there's some other places in the country where that's happening as well, but we're going to see that and hopefully move towards that more and more and more. And as we do that, I think travel stocks will be something interesting to continue to watch. Ultimately, we want to come in, apply our skill sets. Some of these stocks, they're still lagging behind. So they've got some room to grow. And I think that given the right skill sets to know when to enter and exit, those ones that are lagging behind, like we saw more so in the cruise lines, which really aren't picking up yet, My question is, how are those going to be explosive in the coming months as they normalize? Something to watch there. Also, some of the airlines we looked at that are I'm going to say outperforming in that they're ahead of some of the others. For example, Southwest ahead of some of the others in airlines doing better. Okay. So it's a hotter stock. Does that have as much more room to run? This is where we can get caught in this place of going, well, Blair, wait a second. We've talked about a lot of stocks tonight. We've looked at these charts. How do I know what's the right one for me? How do I know? How do I decide for my dollars when I should get in, when I should get out of a stock? Well, that ultimately is what we talk about in our Step 1 Start Your Journey course. I am going to invite you to join us for the Step 1 Start Your Journey. I'm going to drop a link in here. You can always go to tradeway.com. You can click on the link right on the main page and join the class. What are we going to do in this class? We're going to help you know the answer to that question I just asked. How do I know when to get in? How do I know these patterns you're talking about? How can I ultimately be an informed investor and trader on my own and have somebody help me understand that? That's what we do in the Step 1 Start Your Journey course. You say, I don't know if I know enough. You can come in knowing absolutely nothing. And if you do, you'll come in the state that I came in to the room in Philadelphia at a Hilton hotel in the winter of 2015. Okay, that's when I started knowing zero about all of this. And now I'm here imparting what I've learned and discovered to you so you can start the journey too. For those of you out there that are looking to go further, that's the best way to do it. Laura, I see your comment there. Good to see you too. Glad to have you on here tonight, joining us from YouTube with Benjamin as well. For all of you guys out there, those of you joining us on the recording, thank you so much for being on here. If you have any questions, concerns, thoughts, you can always hit me up right there on YouTube, on Facebook. Comment, ask your questions. I'd love to hear from you guys. Appreciate you being on here tonight, spending your Thursday night with me. We are back on Monday. It's Market Monday. I am going to start a new series in Market Monday. We're going to announce more of that in the coming days here, but I'm going to start a new series of some things that I think are really going to help you feel more confident about trading in the market. It's a little something we call a stop loss. And we've talked about it a little, but there's a whole discussion to have there. So we're actually going to have a multiple part series on helping you feel more confident. Did you know when you get in a trade, you can decide before you get in the trade, this is the maximum amount I'm willing to lose on this. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. In fact, it's your job as a trader. It's my job as a trader to decide the max we want to lose and keep it that. That's what we're going to talk about. We're going to do a new series. But like I said, more coming on that later. That's on Market Mondays, same time, same channel. We've got our Trading Tip Tuesdays, Word Wednesdays, and then we're back for Stock Talk Thursday next week. So we got all kinds of stuff coming to you guys. We want to make sure we're pumping information into your home, but don't stop at information, because transformation doesn't come from information. Transformation doesn't come from information. Transformation comes from application of information. Then you get experience. Then you get revelation. And now we're moving. So don't stop short. I say this to our students. Don't sell yourself short. You can't afford to do it. And if you know what shorting stocks is, you know what I'm talking about. Thank you guys for being on here. I'm going to close it up with that. I appreciate all of you. Have yourselves a good weekend. Markets open tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. I'll be watching. Hopefully you will too. And we'll see you guys on Monday.